Welcome back to some new PettyRevenge stories, where people share small victories over those who wronged them. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called Non-Contributor. I worked at a call center where we all sat in teams of about 8 to 12 people. One of the guys on my team was the type who never contributed to our team potlucks, but would eat more than anyone else every single time. We had potlucks at least once a month, sometimes even more often. In November of that year, management held a competition to see which team could donate the most money to a local shelter or a similar cause. One guy on our team was incredibly motivated to win this competition. No idea why. The prize was just a pie from a local bakery, so nothing extravagant. But he really wanted to win. Everyone on the team donated money, except for one person. On the final night of the competition, it was neck and neck between us and another team that also had a super competitive member. Our guy was asking everyone to scrounge up spare change from anywhere they could find it. Of course, the one person who hadn't donated anything was the same guy who never contributed to the potlucks. When we asked him if he had any spare change, he said he did, but he wasn't going to donate. And I crowed, not even a quarter. He was quite a character, to say the least. We ended up winning, thanks to our overly determined teammate, who literally went to an ATM to donate. The team decided to get a cheesecake as our prize. Now, I didn't want Mr. Non-Contributor to have any of it, so I sent an email to the team saying something like, "We won. Anyone who donated is welcome to have some cheesecake." Within 5 minutes, my manager called me aside and told me I couldn't exclude anyone from potlucks. That was the rule. I explained this was different. It wasn't a potluck. It was a reward for donating to charity. To my surprise, the manager agreed with me. All day long, I kept noticing Mr. Non-Contributor staring at the cheesecake in the middle of our area. At the end of the day, there were only 1 or 2 slices left. It was obvious he was waiting for everyone to leave so he could grab them. I was the second to last person there, and it was clear what he was up to. So I went full petty. I picked up the last pieces and threw them into the garbage can, while making eye contact with him. The next day I got in trouble, because he went and complained to the manager. But honestly, it was worth it. Dealing with people like that isn't always easy, but moments like that feel like a little victory. The next story is called Ignored. I work in public transport, and part of my job includes making announcements, answering questions, and helping the public. On this particular day, I made 3 announcements, explaining every stop we'd be making, when we'd arrive, and how long the journey would take. After I finished, a young woman with headphones on came up to me and asked if we went to the stop I had just announced 3 times. When we arrived at that stop, I made the announcement twice to ensure everyone heard it. People got off, but she stayed on. I tried to approach her to indicate that this was her stop and let her know we needed to depart, but she ignored me completely. As far as I know, she was still on board when I started my break about 20 minutes after her stop. If she realized her mistake and got off at the next stop to catch a connecting service, her additional travel time would have been around 8 minutes. However, if she didn't, her journey could have stretched to at least an hour, or up to an hour and a half if she stayed on for the full loop. I did my best to help, but there's only so much you can do. The third story is called The Worst Boss. In 2003, the company I was working for shut down, so I began searching for new employment. I was a machinist by trade with a solid reputation, so it took me less than a day to find a new job. Let's call the new place Spiral, because of the specialized tools they made. I started there as one of the operators. The business was owner-operated, with the owner present daily. He had a floor supervisor who was a pretty decent guy. About a year into my time there, the owner and the supervisor had a falling out, and the supervisor left. For reasons I'll never fully understand, the owner, let's call him Rick, decided I was in charge. A bit about Rick. He was in his 60s and had started the company in his garage. Over time he bought a large piece of land and turned it into an industrial park, all by his 20s. By the time I worked for him, he was one of the wealthiest people in the state. Unfortunately, he was also one of the most difficult people I had ever met. He treated most employees terribly, except for me and one other guy. But even with us, if we so much as talked during work hours, he would yell at us. My promotion financially trapped me. Rick had no issue talking to me, often bragging about his wealth while paying us the bare minimum. During these conversations, I learned some troubling things. He revealed that he cooked the company's books. The industrial park was owned by one entity he controlled, while Spiral was owned by another. He made sure the parks charged Spiral just enough in rent to make it seem like Spiral was barely staying afloat. He also admitted to illegally burying industrial waste on his property to save money. Over the next decade, Rick made my life miserable. He kept my pay just high enough that I couldn't afford to leave, while treating me and the team poorly. The turnover rate was 95%. We eventually had to rely on temp agencies, but even they refused to send us workers toward the end. Through careful wording, I convinced Rick to let me call myself the plant manager. This was a big deal, because even though I didn't have a college degree, I now had the title and the experience to back it up. I started looking for a new job in earnest, and after 6 months, found one that offered significantly more money and benefits, something Spiral didn't provide at all. Now, I had noticed that anyone who gave notice at Spiral was immediately told to leave. The new company insisted I give 2 weeks notice, so I told them I would, but I didn't. On my last day, I sat at my desk and sent an email to 2 contacts, one at OSHA and one at the state's EPA office. Over the years, I had gotten to know them well. In the email, I detailed all the violations Rick had disclosed to me. I also sent an email to the state attorney regarding the fraudulent bookkeeping. I left my keys on my desk with a note that simply said, I quit. I never found out if anything came from the state attorney's investigation, but OSHA hit the company with $150,000 in fines for willful violations. The EPA, on the other hand, dug up half of Rick's property before he admitted to where the waste was buried. The last I heard, Rick ended up in jail. The last story is called Time Thief. Back in college, I worked at a gas station. It was a pretty laid-back setup. We were paid in cash under the table, and there wasn't much structure. Our unique thing was that we didn't clock in or out. We were just paid for each 8-hour shift. I worked from 4 PM to midnight and had a casual friendship with the guy who worked the overnight shift. Let's call him Dave. Dave had a problem showing up on time. At first it was usually just 5 to 10 minutes late, and since we were friends, I didn't mind too much, but it became a regular thing. So I started calling his house 15 minutes before my shift ended, to make sure he was on his way. Unfortunately, because I let it slide early on, he got comfortable with being late. Soon it became a pattern, and he was regularly rolling in 10 minutes late. It started to wear on me, because I wasn't getting paid for the extra time I had to cover, but he was. One night, after a particularly rough shift, I called Dave's house, and our mutual friend answered. I asked if Dave was there, and she said yes, but that he was in the middle of a game and couldn't come to the phone. I didn't want to take my frustration out on her, so I thanked her and hung up. That night, Dave showed up 30 minutes late, the latest he had ever been. I was fed up. When he finally arrived, I let him have it. I reminded him that I was essentially working unpaid overtime for him, and it wasn't fair. He acted a little annoyed and brushed me off, saying, "Just let me know what I owe you on payday." That's when an idea struck me, and I agreed to his terms. From that point on, I stopped reminding him to leave for work. Instead, I started keeping track of every minute he was late. Without my reminders, he got even later. usually 15 to 20 minutes late every shift. I never mentioned it to him again and made sure to stay friendly when he arrived. But all the while, I was diligently tracking every minute. Several months later, I went to pick up my paycheck and the weekly schedule. This was back in the days of printed schedules. Dave happened to be at the counter. "Oh, hey," I said cheerfully. "I'm glad I ran into you. I need to tell you what you owe me." He sighed and reached for his wallet. "Oh, no, you misunderstand," I said, sliding my schedule across the counter. "I don't want your money. I want your time. You owe me 16 hours of time. Which 2 of my shifts do you want to cover this week?" He tried to argue, but I had all the records to back me up. Every minute he'd been late, documented and totaled. He suggested working for me next week instead, but I wasn't having it. "I didn't get to choose when I had to work for you," I said. "You are lucky I'm giving you a choice at all, but it has to be this week." Dave ended up working 7 shifts that week, including a double. After that, he was never late again. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.